Oh, then he
Okay.
should have got it.
Call the Bureau of Public Works regular meeting, Monday, April 28th at sometime. Not sure what that clock says. 5:47, huh? Okay. All right. Beginning with the public comments, if there are any. A call for public comments. Hearing none, move on. Item number 3, independent consumer advocate.
I don't have any questions at this time. Thanks.
Very good, thank you. Number 4, the approval of the meeting minutes from our meeting on March 3rd. Need a
Move
motion?
adoption.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Moving this minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? Thank you. We have pretty much 4 items that we do have to move some action on, whether we have that simple approval or a long discussion. This is what we're up against. So it'll be item number 5, potential action regarding a license agreement for Granby Street in Hartford. So we do have somebody from staff who will make some presentation, I trust. Or not.
Yeah, if I may.
You may.
And then John's daughter's birthday.
I can-
Yes.
Trying to
I
get,
can-
We are.
we're trying to get John out of here quickly.
And I can speak to this as well, Mr. Chairman, so. if you
Yeah,
want
let
me
me-
to start, Scott, do you want to start? Go ahead.
Yeah, let me just start. So we have been allowing, and I hate to even say the date, but this has been going on since, I hate to even say, 2012 probably. The church we purchased this property as part of the Clean Water Project in anticipation of needing this area to build our infrastructure and to use it for laydown area. And the projects that we were planning to do there have not come to fruition through the integrated planning process. But long and short of it is we've been allowing the church to utilize this property for parking over the years. And we've been signing an agreement with them to utilize this property since then. And I don't know if that's the right date, John, 2012. It's in that range.
13, yeah.
So the pastor that we've been dealing with, I think Pastor Johnson has passed, and there's a new pastor, and they're asking us to renew the lease, and council felt important to bring it to BPW because they hadn't in the past, which we're completely fine with. The goal is we don't, again, have a necessity for this property today, tomorrow, but in the next 10 years, we'll be utilizing this property when we're doing separation on the lower Granby Street area. So with that, I just turn it over to Chris, if you want to handle it.
Just really briefly, and Scott did a great intro to this. This started in 2014. They came to us, I think, in 2013, and we entered into what we consider to be a temporary license agreement in 2014. And here we are, 2025, and it's something less than I'm not suggesting it's going to be permanent, but it's certainly less than temporary. And so we thought it was the better practice, even though we usually don't come to you with license agreements or temporary license agreements. We thought the better course would be to bring it to you for consideration and ultimately, if you approve it, to the full board. There's no consideration paid by the church. They keep the property in good stead. There's no issues with the church in the use of the property. We don't need the property, and we have an out in the license agreement upon 30-day notice. They've got to vacate when it becomes land that we need for the Clean Water Project. So that's the sum and substance of it, and I urge the board the Bureau to approve it.
Make a motion?
Yes,
Can I make a motion to approve the resolution?
need a second,
Second.
and we'll call for the vote. All in favor of the motion stated?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition to the motion stated? I guess it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 7. We have 2 pieces of that. I'm 6, I'm sorry. My fault. Item 6. We have a part with East Hartford and a part with Newington. And we do in fact have Mike Curley with us.
Oh, Michael.
Good evening. I'm Mike Curley, Manager of Engineering. So we received a request for an encroachment on April 9th from the consultant engineer for the future owners of that property.
Yes, sir.
The current owners are the town of East Hartford. They're actually going through a purchase sale agreement, and that agreement isn't going to be completed until mid-May. So what we have here is a lot of things going on over the sewer easement. They have a temporary steel bridge going over there predominantly because there's also a large transmission main next to it, and they got to protect that. The bridge is so large, it actually covers the sewer easement as well. They're also going to be demolitioning a lot of the pavement. It's right now this was the former Cinema 123 site. And that building's gone, so all they have is pavement and old utilities. They're going to remove all of that. They're roughly going to basically regrade the entire easement. They're going to excavate up to 2.4 feet deep. The new utilities are what you would expect: new water mains, new sanitary laterals, new electric and communication lines, a gas line, and storm lines. They're also on the surface. We worked really closely with them. We made there were no trees or anything like that going along in this easement. It's just normal landscaping that you would expect, new bituminous pavement, walkways, curbing, and traffic islands. The crossings are all, we looked at those very closely. We made sure that at least there was at least a foot of clearance vertically over our existing sewer. There's going to be 3 new utility easements over ours, 2 from Eversource and 1 from the gas company. Overall, we think that the improvements are minor, really, through the easement, and there will be no detriment to the sewer as long as they follow these stipulations listed here. I do want to point out there is a mistake, just one error. Number 5 is just a repeat of number 3, so there's only 8. And these are routinely used. Overall, we consider this feasible, and we do recommend an encroachment agreement with the future owners of the property. In your packet, I just want to point out that the current owner is the town, and they gave permission to the future owners to put this request in there. So if there's any questions?
Okay, thank you, Mike. Questions, commissioners, before we ask for a motion? Move the item. Thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay. Last call for questions? None? All in favor of the item as put forward? Say aye.
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 Any opposition? Thank you. Unanimous. Passes. The next part of it, I assume, Mike, you're going to say the same,
Yes.
Newington, an encroachment there as well.
So this one is located at 1 Maricona Way in Newington. We received it on December 13th through their consultant, Fuss & O'Neill. The developer is APR Newington LLC. They're going to be impacting 2 of our sewer easements because the property is located at the corner of both of these easements. Site demolition, as you would expect, they're going to remove a retaining wall, fencing, trees, and that sort of thing. They're going to regrade the easements in total between the 2, about 1/4 acre. Proposed utilities, as you would expect, a new water line, gas line, storm drain, and that kind of thing. They are planning to replace the retaining wall they're taking down. The retaining wall we had put outside the easement, but there will be a temporary impact to the easement along Cedar Street. They're also planning to put in the easement light poles, these collapsible bollards and some fencing and some landscaping. All of that isn't going to be a major impact at all. Again, what we require is whenever utilities are crossing going through our easement and crossing our utility, we want to maintain at least a foot clearance, vertical clearance. They're able to do that. The stipulations that we listed here are very similar to the one I just presented. They're the normal 8 stipulations. And we do recommend proceeding with an encroachment agreement for this development. If there's any questions.
Okay, great. Any questions from commissioners? If not, we need a motion to move this item forward.
Move adoption.
In a second.
Second.
Thank you. Once again, questions? Call for the vote on this item. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And Mike, I'm going to just ask you one favor if I could. Can you possibly stay on for a few minutes? We're almost done with the agenda. I need to ask you a question if I could.
Certainly.
Okay. I'll catch up with you.
Okay.
You have to leave, you have to leave.
No, I'll be here.
Okay, thank you. Pardon me for taking that point of personal privilege. Number 7, we have 2 items that 7 and 8 are really connected insofar as any discussion will include both of these pieces. I don't know if anybody but Scott will be presenting information, but let me just say this, that we did get a request from Commissioner Wolf that we open the discussion, answer any questions that you may have, but also to consider that both items number 7 and number 8 be tabled. So before we actually go through a motion to table or any other motion, we would like to have the presentation from Scott. And then if there are any questions, absolutely. So there's no rush to get this. We're just trying to get it clarified. With that, I'm sorry, I didn't,
I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I'm
Commissioner Taylor, I'm sorry.
sorry. I defer to Mr. Torres. Commissioner Torres, please.
Oh, I have Commissioner Torres.
Received a communication from Commissioner Wolf. We've received communication from Commissioner Wolf that he asked for this not to be tabled, to leave it open for discussion, but that the city needs, obviously, some time also to be able to review this. So not to table, but not to take action, to move this forward without having the city given an opportunity to review it.
So, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
Yes, Scott Jellison. So, the intent of tonight, we've been talking a lot about this ordinance over the last 2 or 3 years. And I just want to make, especially the Hartford commissioners, understand the context of what we're trying to do. The process is we're proposing it to the BPW so that you can absorb it and understand it and ask your questions. Go back to the City of Hartford staff. If we need to have a meeting with the city staff to talk about these details, we want all of our commissioners, including Hartford commissioners, to be on board. But just to clarify, the biggest, if you remember, and I talked to Commissioner Gale a couple of weeks ago and tonight about this very topic. What we're proposing here in this document, reflects exactly what we're doing with the development on Bushel South, on Kenyon Street, on Woodland, and Arrowhead. So we're actually acting this way without an ordinance. But if you remember, one of the biggest problems we had with this ordinance was we had a NEPDES permit, which just allows us to discharge and control through DEEP of what we discharge to the Connecticut River. And in that ordinance, we had on page 7.4, we had and I'm sorry, not 7.4, 7.6. We had our NEPDES permit from DEEP said, quote, "You cannot MDC accept any new stormwater into an existing CSO pipe." So that became very controversial. And we went round and round and developed some drafts of ordinances. But we're required under this process to not only get your approval, we have to get DEEP's approval, right? So we went back and forth with the city of Hartford and with DEEP over this issue, and it has yet to be resolved. We're now operating in the way of which we all are agreement. The city's in agreement. We're very successful in getting these developments approved. And this simply mirrors what we're actually executing. So what we did, Commissioner, is we basically took S2F in this ordinance, and we clearly defined what's existing and what's new. The biggest concern with our NEPDES permit was, can an existing site discharge new stormwater to an existing CSO pipe? And that's where we had the conflict with DEEP's permit. So we have clarified this to be very clear that an existing site is defined in this. Now it wasn't. Now it's clearly defined. An existing site is if you have a lot that doesn't have a house on it or any property on it, but it was connected to the MD sewer system at some point in life, it's considered existing, period. And that was the biggest fight. And then in this S2F, there's a number of scenarios that fall under that existing. So we outline them one by one. So that was very clear. If you fall into this kind of scenario, you know what you need to do. And then we also outline new connections. Here's a new connection where you've never been connected to the MDC sewer system at any point in time. So I would say that's a very rare circumstance, but it could be, and some of these locations are excluded, and that's all defined in the ordinances and the guidelines. But it's a very, very rare circumstance where you have a lot that is a grassy knoll that's never had a sewer connection. And then new connections have all the same scenarios, almost identical, but we repeat them so that we're very clear to development, to the council, to the board as to what we're trying to achieve here. But the good news is we believe that this represents everything we're actually doing right now, and it represents, the development agreement we're working on with Bushel South. We'll talk about that at the next BPW meeting, but they're proposing to give us $2 million. We have a possibility of getting $3 million and not $2 million, and we'll talk about that at the next BPW meeting. And then Kenyon Street, I think they're sharing $65,000 or some number like that. But we're following this process, and the development team at the City of Hartford is fully on board with this. The language may need to be tweaked, but I don't think so. But we want this board to review it, understand it, question it, and meet with the city staff. And we're happy to meet with the city staff over it, and then bring it back to BPW, make sure everybody's on board with it. And then once this board is okay with the language, then we'll submit it to DEEP because DEEP has to approve it. But we want to make sure that our Hartford commissioners and our full board are in agreement. And so that will be the process. And that's it.
Enough for me.
That's enough for me.
quick question.
Okay.
The red are the changes, right?
No, there's some, yes, the red are the changes and there's
Why do
some,
we have, so why do we have crossed off red?
the crossed off means that was the original and it was crossed off.
So wouldn't it be just delete that was crossed off because that was part of the
No, because you got to see the
You gotta
changes. You want to see the
The
changes.
red were the changes.
The red
we
crossed out
unchanged-
is the original ordinance that is being modified. And just to clarify,
It doesn't make sense.
you have S2E and S2F and S2Q, which are basically being modified. And they're not just being modified in the language. The structure of S2E was, and John Gale, Commissioner Gale talked about this at a couple meetings ago. S2E was really talking about water quality issues. And then S2F originally talked about exceptions to the water quality. But we have to add quantity issues in here. This is a quantity issue. So we basically modified S2E as shown and S2F to reflect the quantity issue that is of concern. And hopefully, and then we had to modify S2Q because that was the original language that we installed as part of our NEPDES permit that was removed. So
Okay.
I yield
Thank
back
you.
to you.
I do have, Commissioner Taylor had a question before.
No, what I was concerned about here is that for all intents and purposes, this pretty much applies to Hartford. And my concern in reading this was that I was not sure that Hartford had basically had a chance to digest this and to analyze it and to agree upon the language. That was my primary concern here. And I think that I just wanted to make sure without interfering with the Hartford commissioners that basically they had reviewed it, were satisfied, their technical people had looked at it, and, we could then proceed forward, because I think if we're looking at this and they haven't looked at it, and they haven't discussed it, really spinning our wheels here. I mean, and this is not to say that this may not fit, but I just think that I'm just concerned once again that we approach this in the right fashion, that's all. That's my own concern.
So Commissioner Taylor, I will share a conversation that I had prior to this meeting with Commissioner Wolf. And what he expressed to me was that they were interested, they being Hartford and company, were interested in putting together a working group. He did not define what a working group might look like, but I'm going to ask Scott if in fact they had mentioned that and what that might look like.
Yes, and thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Wolf. Can I?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to, I appreciate everyone weighing in. I had to go pick up my son. But I think the city of Hartford is looking forward to, the technical folks are looking forward to reviewing this item and working through this with BMDC. And I think Scott outlined a path for, considering this going forward. So, I'm satisfied with where the discussion is going here.
Thank you for joining in. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Torres.
Yes, Commissioner.
Uh,
Fire away.
Yes, okay, so to summarize, I know we've talked about some of this in the past, and we've actually had an opportunity to work with some developers and trying to figure this situation out, and want to give you kudos for being able to move a lot of these development issues forward on behalf of the city and its residents. So my understanding is that what this language does is basically grandfathers any of those lots that has an existing connection or had an existing connection. So that's basically would be grandfathered. So that would not be a real issue. that the only new developments would be those things like, and I don't think that kind of is a situation in Hartford. It seems like it would be more of a situation that would occur in a suburb where you have open land, and then you're gonna have a mall put in there, or housing, or whatever, you had a connection. That's the kind of thing that then would require the new need for whatever is required. My question would be then, in terms of the issue of quantity. So let's say you have an existing plot of land, has no building on it, it's going to have development on it, so it would basically be able to do that. But in terms of quantity, does that affect the issue of, for instance, of having to store rainwater, or is that not an issue?
Yeah, Scott Jelson. So existing and new, almost, let me just say this, for the first concern, if you have an existing lot and it had a development on it, whatever that was, and there's certain things we don't have control over, right? So the city of Hartford has its own stormwater ordinance requirements, and then the state of Connecticut DEEP has their own. So we can't circumvent that. But if for the first case existing scenario, you have an existing lot and the city of Hartford says you're not required to comply with X, whatever X is on stormwater, then we have no problem with you connecting, independent of the capacity of the pipe in the street. Because we know, even if the pipe is undersized, we know that eventually we're going to fully separate and eventually we'll resolve that problem. But then you have all these other scenarios, and these that we outline every one of them. And so you will have a scenario where you have an existing lot, and the existing lot had a development on it. But then for whatever reason, the city of Hartford development decides that that development must comply with their stormwater ordinance, which is not ours, it's the city's. And so they have to go through an exercise, and that exercise might say you have to put X amount of retention on site for that stormwater. That's not our requirement, that's the city ordinance requirement. And if we have the capacity to handle everything else coming off that site with that retention system built per the city's requirements or the state's requirements, you can connect. Or there's a scenario which we can use the example like Arrowhead or Bushnell South or Kenyon, where we say, okay, the city's requiring you to do X with stormwater management on site, and you have to build this retention system that's X, whatever that might be. In the case of Arrowhead, it was $200,000. And so what we said, and it says it here, is that we can elect to enter a cost share agreement with the developer to say, you give us the $200,000 and we'll build a new storm pipe. You could have a scenario where that development is not in the middle of the street, so to speak. It's like at the end of the rainbow, and it's not serving anybody but that developer. And then that would be a different conversation, because that cost share, we're charging everyone at our 8-member towns for that when it's not benefiting them. So there's got to be a cost benefit analysis that we look at. How can we justify paying for something that is not just benefiting the developer? And then you go into the new scenarios, and it repeats itself. So as you look at it, we try to catch every scenario, Commissioner, that could occur. Sometimes you're dumping into an existing CSO pipe, and sometimes you're dumping into a new storm pipe in the street, but it dumps to an old CSO pipe. So we have to make sure that we're not only in compliance with the MDC ordinances, that you're in compliance with the city ordinance and the state ordinance. The city ordinance right now, 6.14, says you must do X. And the state ordinance has a different requirement that you have to do Y. And so we can't make that determination. It has to be done by the city and the state. And then once we get that information, we can go through this process to figure out, but the most important part, which was the biggest concern of the Hartford commissioners, was I got this existing lot and it was connected years ago, but now the house got demolished, but somebody wants to redevelop. The answer is it can connect.
You good with that, Commissioner Torres?
So far, so good.
Okay, just checking in. Yeah, Commissioner Taylor,
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I guess one of my questions is the housing connection, is that a term of art or is that a defined term? Because does that apply across the board to both? Let's say that you had a lot that basically wasn't housing, but say it was a garage or some kind of business. Where would that fall under this category?
Yeah, so how the definitions are defined by ordinance. So your house connections, your sewer connection, your house drain connection is a storm drain. So the ordinances follow the definitions within our ordinances. And so it doesn't really matter if you're if you had a garage, a car garage of some kind of commercial, and it was existing, and the city waived, or it doesn't fall under the requirement of having to comply with the city ordinances or the state ordinances. No one can waive the state ordinances, the city or ourselves. The state has to, and they most likely won't. But whatever the requirements are for on-site storage and stormwater retention is not an MDC issue. It's a city and state issue.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if I may, Chris Stone, District Council.
thank you.
Just a shorter, not short, but a shorter answer to the question is the term house connection is really just refers to a connection to the sewer, but we use it and used it historically. It applies both to residential, commercial, industrial properties. I don't know if that's where you're going, Commissioner Taylor, but it applies to all.
Yes, thank you.
It's an umbrella. Okay.
Thank you. Yep. That was my question.
Another question? Before I ask for someone to make any motions regarding either this or the next item, can I get back to Attorney Stone and ask how you want to see this action moved along? The question originally put to me was whether or not we would consider tabling the item so that a working group might be put together by the City of Hartford and MDC to some end. So that's where we left it. But they did want to hear some questions and any discussion that might ensue. So the question to you, Attorney Stone, is what do we do first?
Well, the important part, Chris Stone, District Council, the important part of tonight, and I think Scott's done a very good job in terms of explaining in a 30,000 foot level what this ordinance is all about, how it came about, where we were several months, if not years ago, and where we are now, and not just in terms of our relationship with the City of Hartford, but also in terms of our relationship with DEEP and how they described the restrictions as to access to or discharges into our combined sewer system back then, and now how they're describing it as something less than what they originally required under our NETHES permit. That being said, and I've heard it from Scott, and I think it's a very constructive approach, is to bring this to the Bureau of Public Works, not necessarily going to get any motion or action formally on the ordinance changes themselves, but to refer it back to staff to work with the City of Hartford, whatever you want to call it, working group or an informal group, so that it'll give Scott and his staff an opportunity to explain what we're doing here to the City of Hartford, I think Commissioner Taylor pointed out, this really affects primarily the city of Hartford. And so having their staff have go through a review, and quite frankly, I don't think there's going to be anything that's going to change, because what we're trying to codify here is what we're doing now with the blessing, with the consent, or with the knowledge of city staff to promote development within the city, within reason, and to make sure that our system remains as robust as it can possibly be. So, long story short, no formal action needs to be taken tonight. You can keep it on the agenda for your next meeting. And in the meantime, based upon the commitment from Scott and the commitment through Hartford commissioners from the city of Hartford, we'll be working with them over the next few weeks or so. You may see some change, some minor tweaks to the ordinances in front of you, but I'd rather have you act on a document that is final in that respect, with City of Hartford input, than to approve a document tonight, only to approve amendments later on. So you don't need to table it. You don't need to just take no action. We'll have it on the agenda for the next Bureau of Public Works meeting, or perhaps a special
Work in
meeting,
process. That's what.
and then we'll go from there. I hope
So-
that answers your question, Commissioner.
Through you,
Hoffman.
Mr. Chairman.
Uh,
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Identify yourself, sorry.
Commissioner Torres.
Torres.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was the phone, sorry. My fault.
I think the proper process here was just to receive it with no action, so that the administration can then move forward with discussions with the city of Hartford. So I think if the motion to receive and leave it at that.
Okay,
Process.
so the action on number 7 is no action. And the action on number 8, again, is no action, but they are conjoined items which will be unraveled with some kind of a working group
Correct.
at a date to be
And we'll be able to report back to for the next BPW meeting.
correct.
And I think we're gonna, have a very easy time with the city staff to get this resolved and approved and get the commissioners to feel comfortable. And then once that's done, then we will submit this to DEEP for their approval. Because our NEPDES permit says you must adopt an ordinance to address this issue. So we have to have it approved as part of our permitting process.
Your plan of action, Mr. Chairman, is perfect.
I
Okay.
think that's a great process
Yes,
to move forward with.
okay. All right. And at this point then, move on to opportunities for public comments. If there are any opportunity, any public comments to be made at this point? If not, we'll move on to number 10, Commissioners' suggestions for consideration on future items, aside from the ones that we just suggested would be in the future. Anything else? Last call? I guess the last thing we can say is
Move
that too.
adjournment.
Thank you.
Perfect.